The day I received the call, I was staring out of my small apartment window, watching the city pulse beneath a sky colored with the last remnants of a setting sun. It felt like any other evening, and yet everything had shifted in an instant. My phone buzzed with an unknown number, pulling me out of my thoughts. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something about that moment made me reach for it. Hello? I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the unease bubbling in my chest. A formal voice on the other end answered, Mr. Brooks, this is James Turner. I am the attorney for your late Aunt Evelyn Montgomery. I'm afraid I have some difficult news to share. My heart skipped a beat. I knew what was coming before he even spoke the words. I'm sorry to inform you, sir, but your Aunt Evelyn passed away last night, peacefully, in her sleep. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. My aunt, Evelyn Montgomery, the woman who had been a constant in my life, who had shaped so much of who I was gone. I hadn't seen her in the past few weeks, but I had spoken to her just days before. She had always been a presence in my life, a kind of quiet force who held things together when everything else seemed to fall apart. How could she be gone? My fingers tightened around the phone and I forced myself to breathe. What happened? I asked, my voice trembling. Again, I am deeply sorry for your loss. James Turner continued, his voice now softer. But your aunt left very specific instructions. She requested that I contact you before anyone else in the family. She wanted you to be the first to know. I didn't understand what he meant, but I couldn't focus on that now. The grief was overwhelming. My mind was racing through every moment I had shared with Aunt Evelyn. The holidays when she would give me books and old records. Her warm smile when she handed me gifts that always seemed to say more than words ever could. She was the one person in my family who truly understood me, and now she was gone. Mr. Brooks, are you still there? Turner's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Yes, I'm here. What do I need to do? I asked, trying to steady myself. She left a letter for you. There are specific arrangements she wanted made. She requested that you come to my office as soon as possible to read it. It's a matter of urgency. The weight of his words settled into my chest, making it hard to breathe. A letter? What was it that Evelyn could possibly want me to do? It was more than just her passing. There was something more. Something she had planned for me. But what? I'll be there soon, I said, my voice sounding foreign even to myself. I hung up the phone, my mind still whirling. I stared at the screen for a moment, hoping for some clarity that never came. I barely noticed the time passing as I went through the motions of getting ready. The funeral home was already making arrangements for the service, and yet, something told me this wasn't just about a funeral. Evelyn had always been more than the sum of her wealth and business dealings. She had always been a mystery, someone who played her cards close to her chest. But this felt different. By the time I arrived at James Turner's office, my mind was numb. The building itself was imposing. One of those places that felt old and steeped in history. The kind of building where things were decided behind closed doors, away from the public eye. Turner's office matched the building perfectly. Dark wood paneling, large leather chairs, and a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my entire apartment. I felt out of place as I stepped inside, but Turner greeted me with a calm, measured demeanor, the kind that suggested he had seen it all. Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming, he said as he gestured for me to sit down. I know this is a difficult time for you, but I believe your aunt left something that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. I nodded, still trying to process the weight of what he was saying. Turner slid 2 envelopes across the desk. One was thick and formal, emblazoned with the law firm's insignia. The other was smaller, cream-colored, and handwritten in elegant script. My name was written across the front. Aiden Brooks, in the flowing hand of my aunt. It was unmistakably her handwriting. I picked up the smaller envelope, my hands shaking slightly. The larger envelope was business, but this was personal. This was Evelyn. Your aunt was an extraordinary woman, Turner said as I stared at the envelope. She was brilliant in business, but she also had a very specific way of handling things. She wanted you to read this letter before anything else. I nodded and carefully tore open the envelope, the familiar scent of roses and vanilla filling the air. It was like she was still here with me. I unfolded the letter and read the words aloud, almost as if I were whispering them to her, hoping that somehow I could still hear her voice. My dearest Aiden, if you are reading this, it means I have finally run out of time. Please, don't be sad for me. I've lived a life that I am proud of, full of joy and purpose. I've seen the world in ways most people only dream of. But now, there's one last thing I need you to do for me. At my funeral, you will be required to read this letter aloud in front of the entire family. It's important that they hear the truth. Your truth. The truth that you are the one who will carry on what I've built. You will find another letter in my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were just a child. It will be there. I know this seems like a lot to ask, but you've always been the one who could face difficult truths. And that's why I need you. I've left everything to you, Aiden. The company, the assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read this letter aloud at my funeral. No exceptions. I know this is heavy, but you've always been strong enough to carry the load. All my love, Aunt Evelyn. P.S. Don't you dare let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I reread the letter twice, trying to make sense of it. My aunt had left everything to me. Montgomery Enterprises, the wealth, the legacy. But why this condition? Why a letter at the funeral? Why not before? The uncertainty clawed at me, but there was no turning back now. Mr. Brooks, if I may, Turner said, breaking my trance. Your aunt also left instructions for you to come to the estate as soon as possible. The company's future depends on your decisions. It's important that you follow her wishes. I looked up at Turner, the words slowly sinking in. This was bigger than I could have imagined. The company, the empire that my aunt had built, was mine now. But it wasn't just about inheriting wealth. It was about uncovering a hidden truth. A truth that Evelyn had kept from everyone, even me, until now. I stood up, my legs feeling weak, and tucked the letter into my jacket pocket. I understand, I said. I'll go to the estate. The drive to Evelyn's estate felt like an eternity. The familiar streets I had grown up on seemed foreign now, and the house that once felt like a safe haven was now the place where everything would change. The gates to the property opened as I approached, and I felt the weight of the world settle on my shoulders. Evelyn had entrusted me with something important, something that could change the course of my life, and the life of my family. I didn't know what was coming, but I had to face it. It was the only way forward. As I stepped inside the mansion, memories of my childhood flooded my mind. Evelyn's laughter, the smell of fresh roses, the beautiful furniture, the bookshelves lined with the wisdom of generations. This had been my home away from home. I had always known there was more to Evelyn than met the eye, but I never expected this. In that moment, as I walked through the halls of Evelyn's house, I realized one thing for certain. My life had just changed forever. The days following the phone call were a blur. I moved through them like a shadow, haunted by the letter from Aunt Evelyn and the promise I had made to her. I had barely slept, my mind racing with questions, uncertainties, and a deep sense of dread. What had Aunt Evelyn meant by the truth? What had she hidden from the rest of the family? And why had she chosen me to be the one to reveal it? The estate was quieter than usual when I arrived. The large wrought iron gates opened automatically, and I drove up the long driveway, the tires crunching against the gravel. It looked exactly as I remembered it. The sprawling Victorian mansion, surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens, roses climbing every surface. Evelyn had always been obsessed with roses. She told me once that they were the only flowers that could embody the complexity of life. Beautiful, but thorny. I could never quite understand what she meant until now, standing in front of the house feeling as though the thorns were starting to prick at my skin. As I parked, Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, came out to greet me. Her face was drawn with grief, her eyes red from hours of crying. "Mr. Brooks," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. She truly adored you." I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you, Mrs. Peters. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," she replied, though I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Your aunt left very specific instructions. She wanted you to go through her things. She trusted you more than anyone, Mr. Brooks. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't sure how to handle being the person entrusted with everything. Evelyn's things felt sacred, like they held the essence of the woman herself, and now I was the one who had to carry her legacy forward, whatever that meant. Mrs. Peters led me inside, and I was struck immediately by how much the house seemed to embody Evelyn. It was a strange blend of elegance and eccentricity. Fine furniture mingling with odd trinkets from her travels, antique books shelved beside modern art. There was always a sense of whimsy here, a feeling that Evelyn's spirit had touched every corner, turning even the most ordinary object into something extraordinary. Her favorite chair, the one by the window that overlooked the garden, sat untouched. I could almost hear her voice in the air, like she was still watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I've already packed some of her personal things, Mrs. Peters said, breaking my reverie. But there's something you'll want to see upstairs, in her bedroom. I followed her up the grand staircase, each step creaking beneath our weight. Evelyn's bedroom had always been a sanctuary, a space where she could retreat from the world. It was a room filled with light, large windows that opened out to the rose garden, and it smelled like lavender and roses, the same fragrance that always lingered on her clothes. The furniture was antique, the kind of pieces you'd expect to find in a museum, and there were pictures everywhere. Photos of Evelyn with her friends, with colleagues, with me. But the one thing that always stood out was her jewelry box. It was a small rosewood chest, intricately carved with a secret compartment that only she knew about. I'll leave you to it, Mrs. Peters said, her voice soft, almost reverent. She wanted you to be the one to go through her things. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. I nodded absently, too overwhelmed to speak. As she left the room, I stood there for a moment, looking around at the room that had been Evelyn's sanctuary. It felt like she had just stepped out, that any moment she might come back and tell me what to do. But she wasn't coming back. This was all on me now. I walked over to the dresser, my eyes falling on the jewelry box. It was exactly where it had always been, next to her favorite books, a few scattered papers, and a small framed photograph of us from years ago. I hadn't realized until that moment how much she had shaped my life, how much I had relied on her quiet presence. She had been the constant when everything else felt uncertain. And now, all of that was gone. The jewelry box was beautiful, carved with delicate roses, just like the ones in the garden outside. I ran my fingers over the surface, remembering the day she had shown me how to open the secret compartment. I was 12, sitting at this very desk while she explained that sometimes the most important things in life were hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right person to find them. At the time, I hadn't understood what she meant, but now, with my heart pounding in my chest, I did. There was a small carving of a rose on the side, and when I pressed the third petal from the left, I felt the familiar click. The compartment opened, revealing a sealed envelope inside, just as I had expected. My breath caught in my throat as I carefully lifted the envelope. It was heavier than I had imagined, and I could feel something else inside. Photographs, perhaps, or documents. The wax seal on the envelope was intact, the imprint of Evelyn's initials clear. I didn't open it right away. I had known this moment would come, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure I was ready. The weight of the envelope felt like the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions pressing down on me. But I had promised Evelyn that I would carry out her wishes. I had no choice but to move forward. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out the letter. The scent of roses and vanilla clung to the paper, just like the memories of Evelyn herself. I could almost hear her voice as I read the words on the page. My dearest Aiden, if you are reading this, it means I have finally run out of time. Please don't be sad for me. I've lived a life that I am proud of, full of joy and purpose. I've seen the world in ways most people only dream of. But now, there's one last thing I need you to do for me. At my funeral, you will be required to read this letter aloud in front of the entire family. It's important that they hear the truth. Your truth. The truth that you are the one who will carry on what I've built. You will find another letter in my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were just a child. It will be there. I know this seems like a lot to ask, but you've always been the one who could face difficult truths. And that's why I need you. I've left everything to you, Aiden. The company, the assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read this letter aloud at my funeral. No exceptions. I know this is heavy, but you've always been strong enough to carry the load. All my love, Aunt Evelyn. P.S. Don't you dare let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The words on the page were clear, undeniable. Everything was mine. Montgomery Enterprises, her wealth, her legacy. And yet the condition, the demand to read this letter at her funeral in front of everyone, it hung like a shadow over me. What was she asking of me? Why this particular condition? Why now? I sat there, stunned, as the reality of what had just happened settled in. My aunt had left me everything, but with it came a responsibility I wasn't sure I was ready for. There was something more to this than just inheriting a company. There was a truth that had been hidden, and I had to be the one to uncover it. The weight of the letter pressed against me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. I wasn't just mourning the loss of my aunt. I was about to step into a world I had never known. A world full of secrets, lies, and a legacy that was far more complicated than I could have ever imagined. I put the letter back in the envelope and stood up, pacing around the room. The enormity of the situation was overwhelming. I had to go through with it. I had to honor her wishes. But the path ahead wasn't clear, and the family, the people who had once been a part of my life, were now strangers to me. They were all waiting for me to take my place, but what did that mean? I looked out the window, the rose garden stretching out before me, the flowers vibrant and full of life, just as Evelyn had always wanted. I thought about the legacy she had built, and what it would mean to carry it forward. The roses were beautiful, but I knew they could also be thorny. And now, I had to decide whether I was strong enough to face the thorns and the truth that lay ahead. The day of Evelyn's funeral arrived with a strange quietness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I woke early, the sun still low in the sky, casting long shadows through the windows of my room. The weight of the letter in my pocket felt heavier with each passing minute, as if it were pulling me into a fate I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The morning was a blur of preparations, with the funeral home coordinating every detail, the family gathering in hushed whispers, and my own thoughts swirling in chaotic confusion. Everything was happening so fast, but all I could think about was the letter. Evelyn's last wish, her condition that I read her words in front of everyone. The truth that she had hidden for so long, now mine to reveal. I didn't know what to expect when I walked into St. Michael's Cathedral. The place was filled with the soft murmur of the mourners, a mix of family, business associates, and distant relatives who hadn't spoken to Evelyn in years, but had somehow found their way here now that there was wealth involved. The air felt thick with tension. Everyone was waiting for something. But what? A final glimpse of Evelyn? A final farewell? Or was it the promise of something more? Something that would shake the foundation of everything they knew? My family was seated in the front row, each one of them appearing as a caricature of themselves. My father, stoic and distant as always, his expression unreadable. My cousins, John and Rebecca, sitting next to him, their eyes darting around nervously, their hands clutching the sides of the pew as though they were bracing for some kind of impact. I could see the anticipation in their eyes. They had been waiting for this moment, waiting to see what Evelyn had left behind, hoping it would be theirs. But they didn't know. They didn't understand. I stood there, at the back of the cathedral, watching them all, feeling the weight of the moment settle in my chest. The cathedral's high ceilings seemed to echo with the history of the place, and the light that filtered through the stained glass windows made everything feel surreal. It was as though time had slowed down, every second dragging its feet as I tried to calm my racing thoughts. The ceremony proceeded as it should. Formal, structured, almost mechanical. The minister spoke words of comfort, reminding us of Evelyn's contributions to the community, her generosity, and her legacy. But none of it felt real. It all felt hollow, as if these words had been rehearsed for years. Everyone knew that Evelyn had been a powerful woman, a force to be reckoned with in both business and philanthropy. But none of them knew the truth. The truth that I was about to reveal. The truth that Evelyn had asked me to carry forward. As the service came to a close, the minister gave a final prayer, and everyone rose to their feet. It was then that I felt the first pang of fear. It wasn't the fear of speaking in front of a crowd. No, it was something deeper, something more profound. It was the fear of the unknown. The fear that once I revealed what Evelyn had left behind, there would be no turning back. That the delicate web of lies my family had been living in would come crumbling down, and I would be the one holding the pieces. I walked slowly to the podium, my hands shaking as I held the letter. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, their stares heavy, expectant. My father's gaze was fixed on me, his face pale, his lips pressed tight together in a grim line. He knew something was coming. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched. But did he know the truth? Or was this going to hit him just as hard as it would hit everyone else? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I could almost hear Evelyn's voice in my head, urging me on. She had always believed in me, even when no one else did. And now she was asking me to do something that felt impossible. But I couldn't back down. I wouldn't. The room fell silent as I broke the wax seal on the envelope, the crack of it echoing like a starting gun. I pulled out the letter, the familiar scent of roses and vanilla filling the air around me. It was as though Evelyn was still there, watching over me. I glanced at the letter one more time, my hands trembling, before I began to read. My dearest Aiden, if you are reading this, it means I have finally run out of time. Please don't be sad for me. I've lived a life that I am proud of, full of joy and purpose. I've seen the world in ways most people only dream of. But now, there's one last thing I need you to do for me. At my funeral, you will be required to read this letter aloud in front of the entire family. It's important that they hear the truth. Your truth. The truth that you are the one who will carry on what I've built. You will find another letter in my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were just a child. It will be there. I know this seems like a lot to ask, but you've always been the one who could face difficult truths. And that's why I need you. I've left everything to you, Aiden. The company, the assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read this letter aloud at my funeral. No exceptions. I know this is heavy. But you've always been strong enough to carry the load. All my love, Aunt Evelyn. P.S. Don't you dare let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. The silence in the room was deafening as I finished reading. I could feel the eyes of my family on me, burning into me, waiting for me to explain what this all meant. I could see my father's face, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly agape. He looked like he had just been struck by lightning. And then, the whispers began. Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire, each one more frantic than the last. People shifted in their seats, exchanging glances, unsure of how to process the words they had just heard. But it wasn't just the family members who were stunned. I could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on me, like an anchor dragging me into the depths of the sea. This wasn't just about the inheritance. It wasn't just about the money, the power, or the legacy of Montgomery Enterprises. This was about something much deeper. It was about a secret that had been buried for years, a secret that Evelyn had carried with her to the grave. I paused for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation settle in. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I had just revealed. How could Evelyn have kept this hidden for so long? How could she have let my father and the rest of the family live this lie? The next photograph I pulled out from the envelope sent a shock through the room. It showed a young Evelyn standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding blueprints for what looked like the foundation of Montgomery Enterprises. The man beside her had the same intense gaze that Evelyn had, a look of quiet determination. The truth was there, in the photograph. Evelyn had never been the sole founder of Montgomery Enterprises. She had shared that title with Harold Bennett, a man whose legacy had been erased by my father's greed. I turned to face the crowd, my voice steady but filled with the weight of the revelation. The man in this photograph is Harold Bennett. He was my aunt's partner. He was the true visionary behind Montgomery Enterprises. But when he died under suspicious circumstances, my father forged his signature, claiming the company for himself. I could see my father's face go white, the blood draining from his features. His fists clenched, his body tensing as if he were preparing to lunge at me. But I didn't flinch. I had come too far. The truth was out, and there was no going back. This is the truth about Montgomery Enterprises, I continued, my voice now gaining strength. And I am here to make sure it is known. I've spent my life watching my father profit from Harold's death, watching him raise us to believe that power was all that mattered. But it wasn't just about the money, was it? It was about justice. And today, that justice will be served. The room erupted into chaos as family members began shouting, accusations flying through the air. My father stood up, his face twisted with rage. "This is slander," he shouted. "You have no right to say these things." But I didn't back down. It's the truth, and it's time for everyone to know it. I could feel the tension in the room, the shock, the disbelief, but there was also something else. A sense of relief. Relief that the truth had finally been exposed, that it was no longer hidden in the shadows. As I looked at my family, I realized something. This wasn't just about what my father had done or the empire he had built on lies. It was about what we were going to do with the truth now, what we would build from it. And as I glanced at Sarah Bennett, Harold's daughter, standing in the crowd, I knew that this was just the beginning. We would rebuild Montgomery Enterprises together. We would make it something worthy of the legacy that had been stolen, something that would honor Harold's vision and Evelyn's quiet strength. The silence in the room was deafening, but I knew it was the silence before the storm that would tear down the old world and build something new, something stronger, something built on truth. As I reflect on the journey I've just lived through, it feels almost impossible to believe that it all started with a phone call, one that changed everything. A phone call that led to a truth so buried in the past that I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. But like so many things in life, it wasn't about whether I was ready. It was about whether I had the strength to face what was coming. And when Evelyn, my beloved aunt, left me not just her wealth and legacy, but also a responsibility too great for anyone else to bear, I found myself standing at the crossroads of family, truth, and justice. From the very beginning, Evelyn had always been more than just an aunt. She was the one who guided me, who believed in me even when no one else did. She was a woman of quiet strength, a visionary who built an empire not just with her brilliance in business, but with the integrity that ran through every decision she made. But as I would learn, even the strongest among us carry secrets. And sometimes those secrets are the very things that hold the key to everything. Her will wasn't just a legal document. It was a roadmap to a legacy buried under lies and deceit. A legacy I was now tasked with uncovering. The weight of the inheritance felt more like a burden than a gift at first. The company, Montgomery Enterprises, wasn't just a business. It was the result of years of ambition, sacrifice, and betrayal. The betrayal came from the very people who were supposed to be the closest to her, my father and others in the family, who, for their own gain, had hidden the truth about its founding. It was only after Evelyn's death, when I was handed the letter with the cryptic instructions to reveal the truth, that the true story of the company's origins came to light. What I discovered wasn't just shocking. It was a betrayal of the highest order. The company wasn't solely the result of my aunt's genius. It was born from the partnership between her and Harold Bennett, a man who had been erased from history. My father's involvement in forging documents, in securing control of the company through deceit, shattered my perception of the family I had grown up with. The truth had always been there, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right person to uncover it. And that person, as it turned out, was me. It wasn't just the revelation of secrets that was difficult. It was the way those truths affected everything I thought I knew about my family, about my own place in the world. At the funeral, standing in front of everyone with Evelyn's letter in my hand, I had to confront not just my family's lies, but my own fear of losing everything. The truth wasn't just painful, it was the only way forward. It was the key to building something better, something worthy of the legacy my aunt had left behind. It was about facing uncomfortable truths head on, without flinching, and using that courage to rebuild from the ground up. The aftermath of Evelyn's death wasn't just about grieving her loss. It was about taking ownership of the future she had entrusted me with. Sarah Bennett, Harold's daughter, became a crucial part of that future. Together, we began to rebuild Montgomery Enterprises, ensuring that it was no longer a symbol of betrayal, but a company built on integrity, sustainability, and innovation. We took what was broken and used the pieces to create something stronger. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned whether I could carry the weight of the truth Evelyn had left behind. But the company was more than just a business. It was a symbol of the values she had believed in, and it was my job to ensure those values lived on. As I stand now, looking back at everything that happened, I realize that the greatest lesson I've learned is not about business or money. It's about truth. About having the courage to face the uncomfortable, to reveal what has been hidden, even when it threatens to tear everything apart. The truth isn't easy and it isn't always pretty, but it is necessary. And when we embrace the truth, no matter how painful it may be, we find the strength to build something meaningful, something that lasts. The story of Evelyn, of Montgomery Enterprises, and of my own journey through the lies and revelations is a reminder that the past doesn't define us. It's how we face it, how we learn from it, and how we choose to move forward that matters. The truth, even when it is uncomfortable, can be the foundation for something far greater than the lies that have kept us trapped in the past. The lesson here is clear. We must confront the truth, even when it seems like the hardest thing to do. We must face our fears, acknowledge the mistakes we've made, and then use that knowledge to create a better future. This isn't just about business or family. It's about life. It's about taking responsibility for our actions, learning from them, and using that wisdom to build something worthy of the legacy we want to leave behind. So, to everyone watching, remember this. The truth may not always be easy, but it is always the right path. When you choose to embrace it, you will find a strength you didn't know you had. You will find the courage to rebuild, to move forward, and to create a legacy that is truly your own. The past doesn't have to define your future. It's what you do with the truth that shapes the person you become. If you've enjoyed this story and found value in the lessons it offers, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to me and motivates me to keep creating content that can inspire and help others. Together, we can keep learning, growing, and building something beautiful, just as Evelyn and I did. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to bringing you more stories of growth, transformation, and the power of truth.